project management. So, Kristin McArdle, go next. You want to show your video first, or
I'll talk a little bit first.
Okay.
So my name is Kristin McArdle, and I have a small dance company called Kristin McArdle Dance, which is a highly inventive title for, this is my name. And we did a piece Friday night called Aqua Borealis, which I'm happy to know that a lot of you got to see. And that piece was based on bioluminescence in the ocean. It was inspired by imagining, as a human being, what would it be like to communicate with light. And that piece has been in my mind for, I don't know, over 20 years. And the first time I saw bioluminescence, actually, my parents were kind enough to come down from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania to be here today and to see this whole weekend. And they have been indoctrinated into much of this for many, many, many years. So you're making me look good that I was trying to get them recycled a long time ago. So, but when we were young, we would go to Maine and for a couple weeks in the summer. And I think when I was about 6 years old, I had a chance to, we're coming home from dinner, and we have a cabin that's really tiny cabin right on the coast, and it's very calm. And we had come home, and there was no stars in the sky, and I looked down, and there was this color in the water. And I didn't know what it was, and I ran down to the water, and I looked, and I thought it was the moon reflecting, and it wasn't. There was no moon. So I moved my hand, and all of these beautiful streaks of light shot around. And I just sat there, and my parents were telling me I sort of sat there and moved my hand back in the water for, it seemed like hours. And ever since then, I've thought, what is that whole world like? And what does it look like when you go down in the water? And who are these beings? And, you know, obviously growing up on the East Coast, I had the fortunate opportunity of seeing fireflies. And, you know, we all, if you grow up in the East Coast, or, and I know they're not all over the world, but as a child, when you see that blinking creature, and you run to go see it, and you know, hopefully you don't put it in a jar and kill it, forgetting to put holes in it or whatever, but you cup it in your hand and you imagine, wow, I'm talking, but this little thing is going, I'm over here, come get me, or I'm over here, you know. And as you get older, you learn about what's going on, and so I've always been very curious about that, and the sensation, the feeling of how I felt when I was a little girl has been a huge, huge motivator for this piece, the Aqua Borealis piece. It's gone through many iterations. I've been working on it a long time. It's part of a whole series of dances that I created called the Aqua Project, which are all inspired by the ocean. And we did a piece called Turtle Dreaming, which was based on sea turtles, and particularly leatherback sea turtles that we did last year. That was an amazing experience. I got to go down to Trinidad and had the opportunity to work with some of the conservation biologists and the outreach coordinators in Trinidad. And we sort of made a piece together that I then performed at one of their conferences. And again, it was amazing to be in a room of 200 turtle biologists. And I told the dancers that, you know, whatever we do, if we do anything that's, you know, that they're going to know about, they're going to tell us if we're wrong, which they did, actually. Interesting. But getting back to the piece that I'm going to show you an excerpt of Aqua Borealis, and this is something that, for those of you who were there on Friday night, this is a different way to see this, because the video is, the gain on is taken down, so you're going to have to use the mic.
Okay.
To get some sound. Oh yeah, there's one there too, Jim. That's helpful.
I think that's his microphone.
That's
oh, you gotta take it.
Oh, that's his. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
Take this one.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Now we got a microphone straightened out.
It's up, Jim.
It was somehow like being a magical creature.
It's in the black.
Go
up into the black.
Go up half an inch. Right,
There
there
you
you
go.
go.
Right
That's
side.
The
Oh,
power.
I see. Right.
But imagine living in a world where light is the most common form of communication. Rings of blue fire. The cushion is alive. The cushion is alive.
So, and just to give a little more context, again, this was, I'm taking obviously a lot of artistic license with the color. I mean, obviously bioluminescence does not come in pink that I know of yet. In this piece, I'm really trying to create a vocabulary for the audience to think about, to use their imagination and to create enough of variation on the theme of communicating with light to sort of think about this incredible world that we don't get a chance to see, and imagine what would it be like to communicate with light. And here are all these organisms that do, I think, something like the tune of 80 to 90% organisms in the sea use light. And my sort of goal in this whole project is to inspire people through their emotional connection to the sea. And the dances are coming from a deep place, obviously, for myself in being touched and inspired many, many times in different variations of sea creatures and environments and currents. And but I depend, and the art depends on people being there and seeing it, and that is where the exchange happens. And so if someone thinks about a place that they've been that's really special to them, that they went to as a kid or as an adult, and particularly as an adult when you've seen it degraded, you know, this is an audience that knows a lot about this and is working incredibly hard to get people to understand it. But I think that the people that don't know anything about it have this association with the sea, and you want to get them to feel it and think about it when they leave the room, to be inspired. What can I do? And to me, that's it's an indirect approach to conservation. But when people come to see dance concert, we give them information, but it's where they go during the dances. That's the places they're going to go visit and care about. And I'm trying to inspire them. The dancers are trying to get them to remember that their memories of those places really matter, and what can they do to keep them healthy. So that's.
My name's Louie, Psihoyos. I started out, like, when I was a kid, I loved to do art in school, and photography was just a way to do quick art. And I was really, because I didn't have the patience. And then National Geographic hired me right out of school, and I went and I started out like wanting to do stories that meant something, something that would try to move the needle. Like, you know, the early stories I did were like on, you know, the Cove boom, or the Powder River Basin in Wyoming, a black and white story. Then I did a story on garbage. And actually, that's a funny story. The way I got to be the first guy that Geographic hired in about 11 years, a friend of mine, Bill Doffett, who was an editor at Geographic, said, you have to come up with your own, is this on? Yeah. He said, you have to come up with your own stories, because there's 30,000 working photographers in New York alone that are capable of working for this magazine. You have to come up with your own ideas. And he and I had this, we had a wicked sense of humor. And I remember we were talking about, we always came up with the stories for the magazine that were, because they were always so relentlessly optimistic. You know, they do like walk across America. This couple walks across America and find the real America. Bill and I would come up with bulldozer across America. And we'd have like, and we think of all these stories that they would do, like all those pictures that they do within the story, like, you know, a swath of a satellite map going through the Capitol and, you know, the grounds. And just, you know, this sort of, you know, sort of riffing on, you know, these absurd ideas. And Yeah, like our friend, the maggot, life goes on inside a corpse was one. Then there was we were up in this is my first, I was working as a summer intern there, and we were watching this lady haul across the garbage across the lunchroom. And I said, yeah, we could do a story on garbology. You know, there's a guy by the name of, Fred Ward, who was always doing these commodity stories for National Geographic on gold, silver, platinum, diamonds, rubies, and, you know, making, you know, these sort of illustrious things. What about a story on garbage, you know, like urban ore? And so, you know, we could do something like a story like an archaeologist digging up the garbage, because that's what they do. And he goes, well, there's this guy, Bill Rathje, that I just read about, you know, he does just that. He's an archaeologist that looks through modern trash to figure out what, you know, what a civilization's about. And he said, yeah, we could do like, you know, like garbage artists. And I said, I read about these guys up in Northern California, they're doing that. We realized we had a story there. And I wrote it up, and the Geographic accepted it, and I became the first guy they hired in 11 years, like I said, but then I had to spend the next 9 months of my life shooting garbage, trying to make it look good. And then I became the guy that could pull rabbits out of hats, really. And I want to say, I see David Dublé in the background there. I always wanted to shoot underwater, but the first job I had at National Geographic was to edit his film, make sure it wasn't scratched, and I realized that I would never, ever be as good as he was underwater. And I took a career path change right there when I saw the first rolls of films, his first rolls of film come through. But I did that for quite a long time. I sort of lost my way. I got good at taking beautiful pictures, or pictures that served a need for the magazine. And, you know, at that time I started at Geographic. I was protesting nuclear rallies with Pete Seeger up in New Hampshire, and I was really involved in the environmental movement, and sort of lost it. I lost my way, I think, a bit. And then, you know, I always loved to dive, and about 6-7 years ago I was with my dive buddy Jim Clark. I met him. Jim Clark is a guy that, just a minute to talk about him, because he's been an inspiration for my organization, OPS, the Oceanic Preservation Society. When he was in college, he helped send man to the moon. When JFK called to put man on the moon by the end of the century, it was Jim that sped up the computers by 20-fold and made that happen. When he was working at Stanford, he created the first 3D graphics engine, which was just a way that you can create things in the 3 dimensions in real time on the computer. First guy to do that. The day he quit that, he started Netscape, the first commercial internet browser. The third company he created just to prove that the first two weren't a fluke. You know, it was WebMD, but I used that to save my mom's life when I proved to doctors that they were over-medicating her. And we were down in the Galapagos. We were watching illegal long-line fishermen in a marine sanctuary, and Jim said, somebody should do something about this. And I said, well, how about you and I? You know, we'll use your money, we'll use my eye. And I didn't tell him I really wasn't a videographer, but we started the Oceanic Preservation Society, and, you know, I took a 3-day crash course on how to make a film and went to the Cove. And that was sort of the genesis of how that all started. But, you know, when he gave me the money to make the Cove, he said, just make a difference. And here's, you know, this is coming from a guy that sent man to the moon. And so I took that to heart, you know, that, you know, he had, you know, I love and adore this guy, and he's really a successful human being, not just a businessman, but a human being. He's like, you know, Maslow has the hierarchy of needs, you know, like, you know, the basics, you know, premise of mankind, or any species, is for subsistence. You're just trying to survive. You're just trying to get food on the table. The highest level you can attain is, you know, this actualization, where you take everything you've learned, and you basically try to give it back to society. And that's what I was trying to do at Geographic in the early years, and sort of lost the way, but I felt like this is a chance for me to sort of revitalize myself, and, you know, as a human being. And he never saw the film until the day before Sundance. And
Wow.
And he's a real true philanthropist. But just two quick stories. When I was at Sundance, well, we finished the movie two hours before Sundance. And I remember turning to Fisher Stevens, the producer on the films, and said he'd been like 23 films. The last one he did was with Robert Altman. I said, what do you think, Fish? Do we have a good story here or not? He says, well, prepare yourself for a disaster. And I said, well, I've been doing that for 3 years. Prepare yourself for success. At Sundance, we had, you know, 8 public screenings, 8 standing ovations. The film went on. You know, I tried to get the crew out of town because I was paying for the houses. We had 3 houses, and I was like, and somebody says, aren't you going to stick around for the awards? And I was like, well, I thought the award was just getting into the festival. I said, no, it was Saturday night, there's awards. So I paid for one more night for the hotel, for the rooms. And we won Sundance, and we went on to win about 100 awards, including the Academy Award. But the important thing wasn't winning the awards. The point is to me, to do what I try to do, which is sort of advocacy journalism, is to try to move that needle. To try to, like I said it before, you probably heard it a few times if you've caught me in any of these things, it's like Hollywood sees a film as butts and seats, I see it as minds and seats. You know, I got 90 minutes to change your mind and your heart. And that's, and essentially I do it through storytelling. And a quick story of how I got to get the next film. Well, I was at a conference just like this, you know, there was a bunch of PhDs talking about ocean issues. There was a marine mammal conference down in San Diego, 2,000 of the world's top marine mammal scientists giving 15-minute poster sessions. I was bored to tears. And this went on for 3 days, and you leave me from one room to the next, and Rick O'Barry was supposed to be a keynote speaker, and that became the genesis of the Cove. He wasn't allowed to talk, and then, so my ears perk up at these conferences. And when I was at Sundance, I picked up a couple books that I thought would be light reading, and one was by Terra by Michael Novacek, the head provost of the American Museum of Natural History. And he was talking. I've been on dinosaur expeditions with him and the Gobi, and when he was at the American Museum of Natural History, I was shooting for Geographic, and I thought, oh, I'll pick up some light reading, see what Michael's been up to. And he's talking about the sixth major extinction. You know, that's what his book was about. He's a dinosaur guy, but he's talking about how humanity is causing this 5 major extinctions in the history of the planet. We're going through a 6th one right now. Put that down, a little bit heavy. The next book I picked up was was by Charles Vernon. He wrote a book called A Reef in Time. He's talking about the 6th major extinction on the planet. There's, you know, the reefs always start to go, he says, right before a mass extinction event. And I thought, well, the reefs are starting to go, and I thought, well, this is a sign. You know, so that became the the genesis for the next film that I'm working on, which is called The Singing Planet. Now it's called The Singing Planet. It's really a film about mass extinction. But you know, how do you tell a story about mass extinction and get people to care? You know, some scientists like Michael say that half the species on the planet will go extinct by the end of the century. Now that's an amazing fact, but it's like hearing like 70,000 sharks are dying a year. It becomes like sort of running the numbers. Nobody can kind of visualize it. And you know, at a environmental conference just a few months ago in Aspen, and then ran into James Cameron. He says, to get people to move that needle, you got people to care about, you know, you have to get them involved emotionally in the story. You know, if you get me to care about my kids, it's going to affect, you know, somehow this extinction is going to affect my kids. That's how I'm going to care about it. Now, let me tell you a story. Like, I could say half the species are going to die by the end of the century, and you sort of glaze over. I'll tell you another story. This is our way into this much bigger story. I was up at the Cornell Bioacoustical Laboratory, the biggest repository of animal sounds on the planet. They had been collecting these animal sounds since the 1930s. And the director plays me this tape, and he says, it's a haunting tape of a bird singing in the woods in Alabama. He says, you know what that is? He says, that's the last male of a species singing for a female that will never come. Yeah, I mean, everybody feels that, right? I mean, it's like, you know, that's, you know, we worry about, as a human being, we worry about, you know, our mortgage. We're worried about, you know, how we're going to, you know, we look okay, and, you know, where's the next meal coming from? But I can't imagine being the last living member of your species on the planet and still singing your heart out and not being able to, you know, be heard. So that's how we're getting at this much bigger, deeper stories, but to try to, through the emotionality, to try to get people to care about the voices of these animals that are losing their songs. And you know, we try. I'm talking a lot, but but these are stories. You know, you tell the stories visually. You know, like Brian and David do so well. What I used to do pretty well. But it's really just great photojournalism is just really just storytelling. And you know, like I said before, if I don't know if you've heard it, you know, just because you have a camera doesn't make you a great photojournalist. Just because you have a computer word processor doesn't make you a Hemingway. You have to develop those skills over time. And but when I feel like I'm just at the very beginning of that, where you can take the words for stories and the pictures and the music. It's this powerful, reverberating thing that I think everybody feels. And I tell you, when I did the Cove, I did that in a complete vacuum. I was, you know, I was at the Cove was edited in my backyard at my studio. My commute was to walk 50 feet from my house to my studio. I thought I could be really delusional taking Jim Clark's money and thinking I could make a movie. But you know, but when I sit in the editing suite and I look at these pictures and the music and everything, the story we put together, I felt something, and when it was right, it was really right. You know, Mark Twain has this wonderful saying where he says the difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between the lightning and the lightning bug. And when you have everything hit perfectly, when you have the right emotional notes, when you have the right story, when you have the right pictures, when everything comes together, there's like this this reverberation. You feel as an artist, like you just feel like your spinal cord gets electric, and you're I'm sizzling right now because you can feel that. You can feel like this is what it's like to be alive. And then when you see that it's in an audience, I tell you what, the first time we had this public screening on Sunday, it was at the library, and a big venue, and I didn't know what it was like. They just sort of led me. I was at a conference like this, but I was talking about filmmaking. What I know about filmmaking, it was my first film, and I got led up through this hallways, and I heard people laughing, and I thought, oh God, there must be a good film showing in there. Then I heard people screaming, and I thought, my God, what's going on in there? I was talking to this guy that wanted to buy our film, and I said, just a minute, I want to see what film's playing. I looked, and it was my film, and I thought, my God, this is working. It's like that, at the right moments they're doing all the right things, and it was like this, to me it's just being able to trust this connection that if I feel something when I'm looking at that screen, there's something universal. And that film is played, in Japan, at the Tokyo Film Festival. It was the most amazing screening that we had because, we had it as a full audience, but all the bad guys were in the audience. And, like their private space, the Mayor Taiji, all the fishermen are there with their lawyers. And we had night vision going on in the screening, and you can see people crying in the audience. You can see Komatsu, the guy that wrote the book on whaling. He was the head at the time. The previous IWC head, International Whaling Commission head, and he was sitting there shaking, holding his head with both hands, and and weeping. And you could see, like, man, this is heavy. This is and now I think my mission on the next film is just to trust that. If I have something like at this conference, people are saying things, these little words, it's like these little bombs that they drop. Like White House was saying something like, it's a race to find the bottom. I mean, there's like a show. I immediately went up to him and introduced myself. I said, I wanted you to talk about the tragedy of the commons for the next film, and the fellow from the I'm here sort of mining, material for the next film. But everything's, everything, the whole world to me is like a canvas, that I can use for this next film to talk about this. Anyway, I'm blathering on too long, but so anyway, that's it.
Dianna, you.
Louie, I wanted just to add. When you were describing the sixth extinction, the one thing I kept thinking is, well, but the plastic will still be here.
Exactly.
That's true. I mean, one of the most, there's a guy, do you know Chris Jordan?
Yeah, really well.
Yeah, he's doing an amazing story over in Midway. Yeah. With the albatross, and it's an incredible story. If he didn't pick up on it, I would have, because when I saw his pictures from there, I thought that's a movie. And he said, well, inspired by the Cove, he's fired his director, now he's directing it, and he's doing a film on the albatross and Midway Island. It's an incredible story. You're midway in the middle of nowhere in the ocean, equal distance to any inhabitable place within the ocean, and these animals that mate for life go out in the ocean where they used to be able to pick up anything and it was food. Now they're picking up plastic and injecting their 40,000 albatross a year on this island full of plastic, and they die of malnutrition.
The babies are dying with their stomachs full of plastic,
right.
And very recognizable plastic, like Bic lighters and Coca-Cola bottle caps.
It's an incredible story, but it's now it's Chris's story, I'm afraid. it's part of the patrol. I mean, the next did you get that 2-minute piece? Well, we did a 2-minute piece on the cost. What's the true cost of burning oil in our culture? We think of $4 for a gallon of gasoline, but it's not that at all. It's the burning of fossil fuels is causing a mass extinction on the planet. As an ocean advocate, we should get off of fossil fuels as quick as possible. So my mission is, how do you tell that story so that it'll resonate with the politician, it'll resonate with everybody in the room, so that they understand what the true cost is? Because if you're in business, you think, well, you can't have hidden costs, because if you forgot to add shipping or some part of your overhead, you go bust. We're doing that as a culture. We're doing that because we're not adding in these externalities, what they're called. There's 2 aircraft carriers in the Middle East tasked to do nothing but protect American interests there, which is their oil. And if you add up that cost, $7.3 trillion, it comes out to $20,000 for every man, woman, child in America. Everybody in this room has spent that since 1976. If you add in the cost of the Iraqi war, it's $8,700. That's has to be tacked onto the cost of the gas, and then I don't know, the deaths and it's you know, but so that's the story in the next film. How do you tell this very depressing story in a very compelling way so people understand it? It's anyway, just better open it up.
Do we have any questions? Dan?
Louie,